Okay, so when it comes to sharpening, the first thing you need to do is set the bevel. I use a belt sander like this, but you can use a really coarse stone or a grinder or whatever you have. Now when you look at your tool, you should see a bevel on there. And if you've been using this tool for a while, then you probably like the bevel that's on it, so you want to maintain that. A way to check that, and a way to make sure that you keep the bevel the same, is you take your tool and you color the bevel in with a Sharpie or something similar. I'm using a straight chisel first because the straight chisel is the easiest to sharpen. And you want the bevel on a straight chisel like this to be the same on both sides. So once you set the angle on the grinder or the belt sander, then it should stay the same for both sides. You put it on your belt sander and you just spin it a little bit without the tool being on, and you can see, if you look at that, it took a little bit of the black off part of it, but not all of it. I wanted to take all the black off, so I need to adjust the bevel a little bit. And it's this one, you just move this in and out a little bit. Check again. And there you can see it's hitting the whole bevel now. So I'll turn this on for a second just to touch it for both sides. Get the bevel set. After I plug it in. You want to be careful as you're doing that because you don't want to heat it up so much that you lose the temper on the end there. So, and from there, you can see that it's got pretty coarse scratches. I use a coarser grit to shape because the faster you remove the metal, the less likely you are to, again, burn. As soon as you burn or change the temper of the metal, then it's going to get dull on you really quick. From there, I go to the coarse side of the India stone. Let me readjust my camera. I've got the coarse stone set up here. I have this is just a bench hold to hold it in place for me. I have another gouge here. We can show you how to sharpen that in a minute. So, when you got your stone, you spread some oil on it. I like this Norton Honing Oil, but you can kind of use almost any oil you have. And the trick to sharpening is you need to hold and maintain the same angle through the whole sharpening process. You put it on the stone, you can kind of feel when it's on the bevel, you'll feel when it's there, and you lock your wrist against your body and just go back and forth on the stone. Be careful, the edges of the stone are sharp, and you can actually wear through your finger, the skin of your fingers, or things like that. So, do a while on one side, flip, get your bevel, you can feel when it's in place, and go back to do the other side. Flip, get your bevel, and you can see the metal is being removed in the oil. The whole point of the oil is that you want to keep the metal particles from embedding in the stone and getting all stuck in there. Find your bevel. And you keep working at that until you develop what's called a wire edge. And a wire edge means that, or a burr on the edge of the sharpening, of the thing you're sharpening. You can feel that by running your finger lightly across the end from both sides. And if you feel, you can definitely feel it on that side right now. So, the sharpest you can get any tool with a specific grit of stone is right when that wire edge comes off. because you're basically flipping back and forth the wire edge, and when that wire edge finally breaks off, it is the sharpest it will be with that stone, that grit of stone. So I've got the wire edge on this side. Flip, because I'm sure I could feel it. Yep, I can feel it there. Find your bevel. And you're also, as you're going through this process, smoothing and polishing the edge and getting rid of the rough marks from the sander. So that's why I start with a coarser stone. And however you hold this is all up to you, as long as you can maintain that bevel. And you can see I'm moving across the stone just to even the wear out on the stone, because the stone will wear eventually. You've got abrasive against abrasive. Okay, and when you're happy with where it's at and how smooth it is, then you wipe this off, because you're cleaning off the extra metal and metal shavings, and flip it over to the finer side of the India stone. Again, give it a nice coating of oil. Find your bevel. And again, this won't cut nearly as fast, but it'll give you a more polished edge. The other thing about this is it'll remove scratches from the coarser stone, and the wire edge you create on this will be much smaller than the one you did in the other. Just count your number of strokes, do roughly the same number of strokes on each side. Let's see. Yep, I can feel a wire edge forming there. This, unfortunately, sharpening is a lot of practice. You've just got to sharpen and sharpen and sharpen until you get the feel. Once you've got the muscle memory and the body movement down, you can sharpen anything. And sharpening really is one of those things that it's better to learn. You can send it off to other people to have them sharpen your tools. But A, then you're doing without those tools while they're being sharpened. And B, you're dependent on them to set the edge and make sure they're not burning the edge or set the bevel. And just a little bit of talk about a bevel. You can see this is a relatively shallow bevel, and I like a shallow bevel for most of the woods that I use, because if you're trying to wedge a piece of metal through wood, then the shallower the wedge, the easier it'll go through the wood. I do a lot of basswood carving or butternut, which are both relatively soft woods, so they allow me to use a shallower bevel. If you're using a mallet and harder woods, cherry, oak, maple, you want a steeper bevel, because the mallet's doing the work, so it doesn't matter how hard it is to push through the wood, and a steeper bevel will last longer against the harder woods like that. Next, after this, the one problem I found with the India stones is they're not quite fine enough for me. I like to go a step finer before I go to the strop or to a buffing wheel. So what I did is I got my strop here. To the other side of it, I used spray adhesive and stuck a piece of 600 Grit Wet Dry Sandpaper. This is good for two reasons. If you get a small nick, then you don't have to go through all the other stones. You can go right to this side of your strop and do that, and then strop it on here. Plus, it keeps all my tools in one spot, and it is roughly a little bit finer than the fine India stone, and it gets me a little bit closer to the really fine grit of the strop, which is your final polishing. You use this, you can use oil on this, but I normally don't bother because I don't want to get oil on my strop, and if this gets bound up or bunged up with metal shavings and metal dust, then I just pull it off, stick a new one on. But you use it the same way. You find your bevel and you just use it the same way. Flip it. Flip. And I'm kind of doing this by feel. I can tell when it starts to get a wire edge, and I flip it. As you're starting off, you might spend a little bit more time stopping, checking for a wire edge, making sure the wire edge is the full way across it, and going back to it. When the wire edge is gone and you've polished it well, you got your strop. I loaded up with some ZAM compound here. This is my favorite. It's aggressive enough to strop quickly, but not so aggressive, but it also gives me a nice fine polish. We're changing our technique here a little bit. Everything else we've been pushing the tool and pulling, kind of going both directions to speed up our time. With a strop, you can only pull. You pull away. You get your bevel and you strop. Lift it away. Because if I went back like this, I'd peel the leather right off of the strop. Ten strops on one side, flip, get your bevel, 10 on the other. Again, 10. Again, 10. And you can see how polished that edge is getting. So if I took a piece of basswood here and tried to shave with it, I always cut across the end grain to test how sharp a tool is. And this is one I've been using. You can see here, it slices nicely across there with a slight whistle sound. That means it's nice and sharp. You could probably spend a few more minutes buffing or stropping this, or going to a buffing wheel like I have on my stone there. But this is good enough for most of your work. Now, how do things change if you're using a knife? They don't really. Knives are identical to sharpening a straight gouge. I've got a flex cut here. You put the same oil on there, and you actively try, once you feel your bevel there, you actually try to slice off this. That's the whole point of this. Slicing along the stone. And then you go the other direction. Again, get your bevel, slicing along the stone. Go to the other side, slice, slice, slice until you get the wire edge. Again, you'll feel the wire edge as you sharpen. Then go to your 600 grit, then your strop. Again, just like everything else, you get the strop, you get your bevel, and pull it away from the sharp edge. And again, you get your basswood and you try to slice it. And you can see how well that slices right there. And the wood almost looks polished because it's so sharp. A gouge. Gouges are more complicated. They add a level of geometry to this. And again, I've already set this bevel with the stone. This is my Swiss made here. I'm going to grab a different one because I just sharpened this one. Here's a shaft tool, and I'm definitely going to need to spend a little time on the stone with this. You can see it's uneven there. So I set my bevel, and if you've got a stone like this where it's really messed up on the end, you can see how ragged that is there. The first thing you want to do is go straight into the stone, because you want to get rid of the weak material there at the edge. So I turn on my stone, I'm straight in here. And that gives me a nice square blunt end. And you can see the edge. So then, since I did like the bevel that was on there, I color the bevel in with the marker like I did for the other one. That'll help me set the bevel. And if you don't have a stone, you can go with really coarse sandpaper on a piece of wood, or you can spend some time with the coarse side of the India stone and you'll get there eventually. But a grinder or something like that makes it a lot quicker. And let's see, it looks pretty close. And you can see it removed black marker there, the whole length. And we go back to this. And as you grind, you can see that flat spot decreasing more and more. And I can see the spots where I need to focus more on. You can see the edges are almost done, but the center I need to take more off of. So I focus my time on the center. Took a little bit more down. A little more down. A little more. A little bit more. And the time that I'm taking off to show the camera is calculated because it gives it time to cool down as well. And that's even more important as we get the metal thinner and thinner because it's more likely to heat up quickly and burn. And you can see that it's mostly good. I got a little too close on this edge here, so I took off my corner. And a lot of times I'll take the corner off anyway and give it a thumbnail profile because I can get into tighter spots that way. But it wasn't intentional this time. So, from there, you put your oil on again. This is a different motion altogether. You're sliding from one side to the other. You find your bevel and you rock it back and forth. And again, this is muscle memory, finding a comfortable position that you can hold your arms in for a long period of time. Because it can take a while to sharpen. You can see on mine that it's starting to polish the top and the bottom. So that means I got a little bit of a hollow bevel there from the round stone. That happens sometimes, but the most important parts of your edge are the actual edge and the heel. I'll often take the heel down. The heel is the part here at the end of the bevel. I'll take that down often even more after I get the bevel set to make it easier to go through wood. So you work your way through that, and you can see I'm getting there. I'm right-handed, so I rotate the tool with my right hand and move it across the stone with my left hand, just so I have more control that way. It's probably vice versa if you're left-handed. So, I'm not going to take it the whole way because we don't need to. I'm showing you the actions. And clean the stone, go to the finer stone, clean that off, go to your 600 grit here, same motion on this stone. And finally your strop. The strop is where it changes a little bit. I find it easier to drag it across here, like this. Start pulling the edge away just like I did with the thing. I just rotate my wrist as I go through it. That gives me the most control when it comes to that. Now, once in a while, as you build up a wire edge in here, it's harder to get out. Some strops have a rounded corner there that you can pull it along and get it off. You can do it with a square corner if you're careful. The other option is to get a piece of synthetic steel wool or something similar, and you use that to just carefully strop the inside. Or you can even get it down, wrap a piece of leather around that, or use a buffing wheel. So, that is a gouge. The final thing is a V-tool. I don't like taking V-tools to the grinding wheel because it's easy to mess them up. I treat a V-tool like pretend it was two flat gouges connected two flat chisels connected by a gouge in the center. So you put your oil down, you get your bevel, and you just treat it like a flat chisel, back and forth. Do the same number to each side, get your bevel. Just like that. Then, when you got a wire edge on both parts there, you're also at the very point of that V, you're developing a hook. So to take that off, you treat it like a gouge. So, when you got all that, you should see relatively square on the end there. And I can feel the wire edges in there, so if I want to take them out, I take the synthetic steel wool, just go across them like that, push them out, then go back to the stone. Move on to the finer stone when you've got the wire edge. Same technique. Then, when you feel the wire edges on the inside, you go to the rocking action that you use on a gouge. And again, when you get rid of that hook, you take the synthetic steel wool or something similar, the 3M pads, hand pads, and just take off any wire edges there. Clean my stone. Go to the 600 grit, same technique. Finally, whoops, I almost forgot to rock. And any wire edge, you remove with the hand pad. Finally, your strop. Strop, do a couple similar to the chisel on both sides. Then do the gouge. Chisel, gouge. And when you're done, you can tell you should be able to make tight turns with your V-tool and no tear out. So, that's the main tools. And that's the best way to get started, and all I can say is practice, practice, practice. The more you get your hands in there and moving them, and using them, the better you'll get at sharpening.